My wife divorced me at my retirement party while my kids cheered. I calmly signed the papers and whispered, "You have no idea what you just did." 6 months later, they'd understand exactly what I meant. But let me back up to that night. The night everything ended and began at the same time. The hotel ballroom smelled like overpriced catering and cheap ambition. 47 years old, 23 years with Brennan Construction, and this was supposed to be my golden moment. Retirement at last. Early retirement, actually. I'd saved every goddamn penny, worked doubles and weekends, built half this town with my own hands. My crew had chipped in for a cake that said, "Happy Retirement, Jack," in blue frosting. My boss, old Tommy Brennan, had given a speech about dedication and craftsmanship that made me proud enough to almost tear up. Then my wife stood up. Patricia. Patty. The woman I'd married when I was 24 and stupid enough to believe love conquered financial planning and in-law interference. She wore a red dress I'd never seen before. Later, I'd realized she'd bought it special for this occasion, for maximum impact. She tapped her wine glass with a fork, and the room went quiet. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of artificial sweetness that meant someone was about to get screwed. "Jack and I are getting divorced." The silence stretched like taffy. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. Tommy's wife gasped. I just sat there, my beer halfway to my lips, frozen like a statue in a town square. Then I heard it. Laughter. Not uncomfortable, nervous laughter. Real laughter. From my kids. Brandon, my son, 28 years old and built like he'd never seen the inside of a gym. He was grinning at his sister like they'd just won the lottery. Emma, 26, pretty in that calculated Instagram way that requires 3 hours of preparation for a casual photo. She was covering her mouth, but her eyes were dancing with something that looked a hell of a lot like victory. "Finally," Emma said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Mom's finally free." Brandon nodded, raising his beer in a mock toast. "To Mom, for not waiting any longer." Patty smiled at them. Not a sad smile, not an apologetic smile. A grateful, conspiratorial smile that told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a surprise to them. This was planned, choreographed. A family production, with me as the only one who hadn't gotten the script. I set my beer down slowly. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for the explosion. Waiting for me to yell, to flip the table, to make a scene that would give them something to gossip about for months. Instead, I smiled. "Anyone got a pen?" I asked. Patty blinked. This wasn't in her script either. She fumbled in her purse and pulled out divorce papers. Actual, already prepared divorce papers. At my retirement party. The level of calculation it took to pull that off would have impressed me if I wasn't the target. I took the pen she offered. I read the papers quickly. I'd always been a fast reader, something Patty used to mock me for. "Reading instruction manuals like they're novels," she'd say, rolling her eyes. But I read every word of those divorce papers while the entire room held its breath. I was getting screwed, royally. The house went to her. The savings were split, but in a way that gave her the bigger chunk. Even my mother's cabin, the one thing I'd inherited from my own family, was listed as marital property pending review. I signed anyway. I stood up, handed her the papers, and leaned close enough that only she could hear me. "You have no idea what you just did," I whispered. Then I walked out. Not stormed, walked, calm, collected. Like I was just stepping out for air. The parking lot was cold. November in Michigan hits different when you've just been publicly humiliated by your own family. I stood next to my truck, a 15-year-old Ford F-250 that had more miles than some commercial airlines, and I breathed in the freezing air until my lungs hurt. Then I smiled. A real smile this time. Not the performance I'd given inside. This one was just for me. Because here's the thing about being underestimated your entire life. People stop paying attention. They stop watching what you're doing. They assume you're too stupid to notice their games, too weak to fight back, too broken to rebuild. They were wrong. I got in my truck and drove away from the hotel, away from my so-called retirement party, away from the life I'd spent 23 years building. I didn't know where I was going yet. I just knew I was going forward, and 6 months later, they'd all understand why I was smiling. The next morning, I woke up in my truck at a rest stop off I-75. My neck hurt like hell, and my breath fogged in the cold air. I'd driven for 2 hours the night before, just to put distance between me and that hotel ballroom, and then I'd pulled over when exhaustion hit harder than common sense. I checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 12 texts. All from Patty, Brandon, and Emma. I didn't read them. I knew what they'd say. Variations on "where are you?" and "we need to talk about the logistics," And maybe, if I was lucky, one half-hearted "Are you okay?" buried in there somewhere. I wasn't okay, but I would be. I drove back to town, not to the house. That wasn't mine anymore. Even if legally I probably had a few weeks before they could force me out. But I knew how this worked. I'd show up, Patty would call the cops, claim she felt threatened, and suddenly I'd be the bad guy. The violent, angry ex-husband who couldn't accept reality. So I drove to my workshop instead. I'd rented it 5 years ago, when Patty had complained that my tools were taking up too much space in the garage. "You're retired," she'd said, even though I wasn't, not then. "Why do you need all this junk?" The junk was 3 decades of specialized tools. Saws, drills, levels, measuring equipment that cost more than her jewelry collection. But she'd called it junk, so I'd moved it. Rented a space in an industrial park on the edge of town, a small unit that smelled like sawdust and motor oil and possibility. I parked outside and sat there for a minute, staring at the metal door. Then I got out and went inside. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. Organized, labeled, clean. That was another thing Patty used to mock. "You're more organized than a librarian," she'd say. Like organization was a character flaw. I made coffee on the ancient pot I kept in the corner. While it brewed, I pulled out a notebook. Plain, spiral-bound, the kind you'd use for grocery lists or phone numbers. I opened to the first page and wrote 3 names. Patricia, Brandon, Emma. Under each name, I started making notes. Not revenge plans. Not yet. Just observations. Facts. The kind of details you notice when you've been married for 23 years, when you've raised 2 kids from diapers to disappointment. Patricia. Obsessed with appearance. Values social status above everything. Hates being embarrassed. Gossips constantly, but hates being gossiped about. New boyfriend? Who? Need to find out. Brandon. Insecure. Loud to cover weakness. Borrowed money from me 6 times in the past 2 years, never paid back. Stole tools from the workshop last spring, thought I didn't notice. I noticed. Emma. Image obsessed. Every decision filtered through, what will people think? Used my savings card when I was hospitalized 2 years ago. I saw the statement. $800 at a designer store? Never mentioned it. I never mentioned it. Waiting. I drank my coffee and stared at the notes. This wasn't anger. Anger is hot and stupid and leads to mistakes. This was something colder, more patient. This was calculation. My phone buzzed. Another text, this time from Patty. "Jack, you need to come get your things from the house. I'm giving you until Monday. After that, it's going to the curb." I laughed out loud. My things? Like I had anything worth taking besides tools that were already here. Everything in that house had been picked by her, arranged by her, judged by her. The only things that mattered were already in this workshop or in my truck. I texted back, "Keep it." She replied immediately, "Don't be childish." I didn't respond. Let her wonder. Let her stew. She was probably sitting in the house right now, expecting me to come crawling back, begging for my stuff, making a scene she could use as ammunition later. "He went crazy," she'd tell her friends. I had to get a restraining order. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I started going through my tools, inventory, making sure everything was accounted for. It took me 3 hours, but when I was done, I knew exactly what I had and what was missing. What was missing mattered. Brandon had taken my cordless drill set last March. The expensive one, Milwaukee, still practically new. He'd asked to borrow it for a weekend project. 6 months later, no drill. Emma had taken a box of my mother's things last year. Old photographs, some jewelry, a few kitchen items that had sentimental value. "I'll keep them safe," she'd said. "You know how cluttered your workshop gets." They'd been stealing from me in small, casual ways for years. Little thefts that individually seemed petty, but together painted a clear picture. They thought I was weak. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't care. Wrong on all counts. I spent the rest of the day organizing. Not just tools. Information. I started a folder on my laptop. Printed receipts, bank statements, text messages I'd screenshotted over the years without really knowing why. The kind of documentation that seems paranoid until suddenly it's not. By evening, I had a timeline, a pattern. Years of small betrayals building to this one big one, and I had a plan starting to form in my head. Nothing concrete yet, just the shape of it, the outline, like when you're framing a house and you can see where the walls will go, where the rooms will be, even though it's just wood and nails and empty space. I was going to build something, not a house this time, a reckoning. I spent the first week after the divorce living in my workshop. I dragged in an old couch from a job site, set up a hot plate, and turned the bathroom into something almost functional. It wasn't comfortable, but comfort wasn't the point. The point was distance, space, time to think without Patty's voice in my head, without Brandon's smirking face, without Emma's performative concern that never quite reached her eyes. I'd taken the week off from Brennan Construction. Tommy had insisted. "Take time, Jack," he'd said, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "Get your head straight. We'll be here when you're ready." But I didn't want time off. I wanted work. Work was simple. Work made sense. You measured, you cut, you built. Cause and effect. Effort and result. Nothing like family, where you could give everything and still end up with nothing. So I went back after 3 days. Tommy didn't argue. He just put me on a commercial project downtown, a renovation of an old factory building into overpriced lofts for people who thought exposed brick was worth an extra $1,000 a month in rent. The crew was good, quiet. They knew about the divorce. Small town, word travels fast. But they didn't ask questions. They just worked alongside me, and that was exactly what I needed. During lunch breaks, I'd sit in my truck and make phone calls. The first call was to a lawyer, not the shark type who advertises on billboards. A guy named Howard Brennan, Tommy's cousin, who worked out of a small office above a hardware store. He was old, maybe 70, and he wore suspenders, unironically. "Jack," he said when I walked into his office. "Heard about the divorce. I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said. "I need information, not sympathy." He nodded. We spent an hour going over the papers I'd signed. He didn't sugarcoat it. "You got screwed," Howard said. "No two ways about it. That settlement is lopsided as hell, and the thing about your mother's cabin, that's questionable at best. You inherited that property. It shouldn't be marital property." "Can I fight it?" I asked. "You could, but it'd be expensive, and judges tend to side with whoever files first. Patty filed. She had lawyers. You signed without representation. That makes you look either cooperative or stupid, and either way, it's an uphill battle. So I'm stuck with it." "Legally? Yeah, practically." Howard leaned back in his chair, his suspenders stretching. "There's always wiggle room. Depends on what you want." "I want what's mine," I said. "Define yours." "My mother's cabin, my tools, my dignity." Howard smiled. "Dignity's not covered under property law, Jack. But the cabin? That's interesting. If she forged your consent for anything related to that property, that's a different story." "How would I know if she did?" "Check the county records, see what paperwork exists. If there's a document with your signature that you didn't sign, that's fraud, and fraud opens doors." I left Howard's office with a plan. Not revenge yet, just reconnaissance, information gathering, building the foundation before I put up the walls. The county clerk's office was located in a building that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1987. Brown carpet, fluorescent lights, and a woman behind the counter who looked like she'd been there since the building opened. "Help you?" she asked without looking up from her computer. "I need to see property records for a cabin in Maple County," I said. "Under my mother's name, Dorothy Kimball." "You have the parcel number?" I did. I'd memorized it years ago, back when my mother first put the cabin in her will. The clerk typed slowly, her long nails clicking against the keyboard like a tap dancer with arthritis. Finally, she looked up. "Found it. You want copies?" "Everything you have?" She printed out a stack of papers and slid them across the counter. I paid the fee and took them to my truck. Sitting in the parking lot, I went through the records page by page. The cabin had been inherited by me when my mother died 8 years ago. That part was correct. But there was another document, a maintenance agreement signed 5 years ago, transferring primary property management rights to Patricia Kimball. My signature was at the bottom, except I'd never signed it. I'd never even seen the document. I stared at that signature for a long time. It was close. Whoever forged it had practiced, but I knew my own handwriting. The way I loop my J, the way I never quite close my K. This was similar, but not exact. I took out my phone and photographed the document. Then I called Howard. "Found something," I said. That was fast. Forged signature, maintenance agreement for the cabin, signed 5 years ago, supposedly by me. Howard was quiet for a moment. "You sure it's forged?" "Positive." "That changes things. If you can prove it's forged, we can challenge the entire property settlement. Get the cabin back, maybe more." "How do I prove it?" "Handwriting analysis, expert testimony. It's not cheap, but it's doable. The question is, do you want to go that route?" I thought about it, about lawyers and courtrooms and months of fighting. about Patty's smug face across a conference table, about Brandon and Emma testifying against me, spinning stories about how I was mentally declining, how I'd agreed to things I didn't remember. Not yet, I said. What do you mean, not yet? I mean I want to hold this card. Use it when the time is right. Howard laughed. You're smarter than you look, Jack. Everyone thinks that, I said. That's the advantage. I spent the next 2 weeks in a routine. Work during the day, research at night. I became an expert in property law, in fraud statutes, in the kind of loopholes that exist when someone gets too confident and stops covering their tracks. Patty had gotten sloppy, or maybe she just assumed I was too stupid to check. Either way, she'd left a trail. The maintenance agreement wasn't the only forged document. There was a consent form for refinancing the house, signed 3 years ago. Another signature that looked close but wasn't quite right. She'd taken out equity to pay for Emma's wedding and Brandon's failed business venture, and she'd done it without my knowledge. Normally, that would require both spouses to sign. But if you forge a signature and no one checks and the bank just files the paperwork, well, congratulations. You've committed fraud and no one noticed. I documented everything. Photographed, printed, filed. Built a case like I was building a house, foundation first, walls next, roof last, but I wasn't ready for the roof yet. First, I needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal, and that meant understanding Patty's boyfriend, because that was the piece that didn't fit. Patty was calculating, sure, but this level of planning, this level of coordinated humiliation at my retirement party, that felt like someone else's idea, someone who knew how to manipulate, someone who had experience. I started digging. Finding out who Patty was seeing wasn't hard. Small town, remember? People talk. I started by asking around at work. Casual questions. Anyone know if Patty's seeing someone? Not bitter, just curious. The kind of question a divorced guy asks when he's trying to move on. Got an answer within 2 days. His name was Derek Paulson. He worked at a corporate security firm in the city, about an hour away. 43 years old, divorced twice, drove a Lexus that was leased, not owned. One of the younger guys on my crew, a kid named Tyler who was dating Emma's friend, gave me the most useful information. Yeah, man, I've heard about that dude, Tyler said during a break. Emma talks about him sometimes, says he's helping her mom get back on her feet. Real smooth talker, apparently, but he hesitated. But what? My girl says Emma's kind of weird about him, like she doesn't trust him, but she also doesn't want to say anything because her mom's happy. Interesting. Emma didn't trust Derek, but she was keeping quiet. That suggested fear or leverage or both. I needed to know more. I found Derek Paulson on social media within an hour. He had one of those carefully curated profiles. Lots of photos of him at charity events, shaking hands with local politicians, posing with expensive cars. The kind of guy who made sure everyone knew he was successful. I scrolled back through his timeline. Posts about living your best life and cutting toxic people out of your circle, and other vague, inspirational garbage that people share when they're trying to look deep without saying anything real. Then I found something interesting. A photo from 3 years ago. Derek at a wedding. Not his wedding, someone else's. And in the background, barely visible, was a woman who looked familiar. I zoomed in. It was Patty. 3 years ago. Before she filed for divorce, before she started planning her exit strategy, so they'd known each other for at least 3 years, maybe longer. I screenshotted the photo and added it to my growing file. Then I kept digging. Derek's employment history, his previous divorces, public records. What I found was a pattern. Derek Paulson specialized in corporate security, but his specialty within that field was interesting. He helped companies investigate internal fraud. He knew how to manipulate documents, how to forge signatures, how to make things disappear, and both of his ex-wives had accused him of financial manipulation during their divorces. Nothing proven. Nothing that stuck. But the accusations were there, buried in court documents if you knew where to look. This wasn't just a boyfriend, this was a professional. Patty hadn't just decided to divorce me. She'd been coached, trained, guided by someone who knew exactly how to dismantle a marriage for maximum financial benefit. And Brandon and Emma had gone along with it, either because they were in on the plan or because Derek had manipulated them too. I sat in my workshop late that night, staring at the evidence I'd compiled, and I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about getting my cabin back. This wasn't just about proving Patty wrong. This was about dismantling their entire operation, brick by brick, document by document, humiliation by humiliation. They'd underestimated me. They'd thought I was just a dumb construction worker who'd sign whatever they put in front of him. They were about to learn different. I started with the cabin. Not legally, not yet. That would come later. For now, I just needed to see it, to remind myself what I was fighting for. I drove up on a Saturday morning. The cabin was 2 hours north, nestled in a forest that still looked the same as it had when I was a kid. My mother had bought it in the 70s, back when land was cheap and dreams were still possible. She'd left it to me because I was the one who'd helped her maintain it, who'd spent weekends fixing the roof and replacing the deck boards and keeping it from falling into disrepair. Patty had been there maybe 5 times in 23 years. She'd always complained about the lack of cell service, the bugs, the rustic charm that really just meant old. But it was mine. Or it had been. I parked on the dirt road leading up to the property and walked the last quarter mile. I wanted to see if anyone was there before I announced myself. The cabin looked the same from a distance, wood siding that needed a fresh coat of stain, moss growing on the north side of the roof, the porch swing still hanging from chains I'd installed 15 years ago. But something was different. There was a truck in the driveway. Not Patty's SUV, a truck, newer, cleaner than mine, and voices. I moved closer, staying in the tree line, and I heard them. Brandon and Emma. "Just grab the good stuff," Brandon was saying. "Mom said we can sell whatever's valuable." "This is so weird," Emma replied. "Like this is technically stealing, right?" "It's not stealing if Mom says it's okay. She has the rights to the property now." "Yeah, but Dad built half this furniture himself." "So? He signed the papers. It's not his anymore." I watched them through the window. Brandon was hauling out my mother's old dresser, the one she'd refinished herself before she got sick. Emma was pulling paintings off the walls, stacking them in a pile. They were looting my mother's cabin like it was the estate sale. I'd planned to stay hidden, to watch and document. But something snapped. I walked out of the trees and up to the porch. Brandon saw me first. He dropped the dresser with a loud thud. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question." Emma came to the door, her face flushing. "Mom said we could take some things. She has the maintenance rights." "Maintenance rights don't include stripping the place clean and selling my mother's furniture." "It's not yours anymore," Brandon said, his voice getting louder. The way it always did when he was scared. "You signed the papers. You gave it up." "I signed divorce papers, not a permission slip for you to rob the place." Brandon stepped forward. He was bigger than me by maybe 20 pounds, but most of it was beer gut and bravado. "What are you going to do about it?" "Nothing," I said calmly. "I'm just going to watch. And remember." "Remember what?" "That you chose to be here, then doing this, stealing from your grandmother's memory." Emma flinched at that. Good. She should. Brandon, though, wasn't backing down. "You don't get to guilt trip us, Dad. You're the one who held Mom back for 20 years. You're the one who didn't have any ambition." "Is that what she told you?" "It's the truth." "No," I said. "It's what Derek told her to say." That got their attention, both of them. "You don't know anything about Derek," Emma said quickly. Too quickly. "I know he's been coaching your mother for at least 3 years. I know he specializes in fraud investigation, which means he knows exactly how to commit fraud without getting caught. I know both his ex-wives accused him of the same thing. And I know you two are either part of his plan or too stupid to see you're being used." Brandon moved toward me then, his fists clenched. "You don't talk about us like that." I didn't move, just stood there, watching him. He shoved me. 2 hands on my chest, hard enough to make me take a step back. I still didn't move to hit him. I just caught his wrists, twisted, and pinned him against his truck in one smooth motion. 23 years of construction work means you're stronger than you look. And I knew leverage. I knew angles. Brandon struggled, but I held him there easily. "Let me go." "You don't get to put your hands on me," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Emma was screaming something. Threats, probably. I ignored her. I held Brandon for another 10 seconds, just to make the point. Then I let him go and stepped back. "You're crazy," Brandon said, rubbing his wrists. "No," I said. "I'm done being the nice guy you can push around. And you just proved exactly what kind of people you are." I pulled out my phone. I'd been recording since I walked up to the porch. Voice recording, not video, but it was enough. "Stealing from the cabin," I said clearly into the phone. "Brandon and Emma Kimball, November 12th. Emma's face went white. "You can't use that." "Can't I? Pretty sure unauthorized removal of property is still theft, even if your mother forged a document to claim she has rights here." "She didn't forge anything," Emma said, but she didn't sound convinced. We'll see, I said. I walked back to my truck, leaving them standing there in the driveway. I heard Emma shouting something, Brandon yelling back at her. Good. Let them fight. Let them turn on each other. I'd just planted the first seed of doubt, and I had 6 months to watch it grow. While you're here, hit the hype button, don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? I didn't tell Howard about the cabin confrontation, not yet. That was ammunition I wanted to save. But I did call him about the forged maintenance agreement and the refinancing consent. You're building a case, Howard said. Good. But you need to be careful. If you tip your hand too early, Patty's lawyers will scramble to cover their tracks. I'm not tipping anything, I said. I'm just gathering information. And what are you going to do with this information? Use it. When the time is right. When's that? When they think they've won. Howard laughed. You're a patient man, Jack. I've had practice. The next 2 weeks were quiet. I went to work, I came home to my workshop. I trained, the training was new. Or new again, I guess. I'd been in decent shape my whole life. Construction work does that. But I'd let things slide in the past few years. Too many beers after work. Too many drive-through dinners because Patty didn't cook, and I was too tired to care. Now I cared. I started running in the mornings, just a mile at first, then 2, then 3. My knees hated me for the first week, but they adjusted. I'd read somewhere that the body adapts to whatever you demand of it. Turned out to be true. There was a gym at the old construction yard where Brennan stored equipment. Nothing fancy, just weights and a punching bag and some ancient machines that squeaked when you used them. Tommy let workers use it for free. Most guys didn't. Too tired after a shift. I went every evening after work. Not to bulk up. I wasn't trying to become a bodybuilder. I was trying to become harder, stronger, more focused. I needed to look at my kids and my ex-wife and not feel like the beaten-down man they'd humiliated at that retirement party. I needed to become someone they'd underestimate until it was too late. While I trained my body, I trained my mind, too. I spent hours reading about fraud, about forgery, about property law. I bought books. I read legal blogs. I became an amateur expert in the exact kind of crimes Patty and Derek had committed. And I started building connections. Tommy Brennan knew everyone in this town. He'd been in construction for 40 years, and in that time, he'd worked with lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, bankers. He knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. I started asking him questions, casual ones, over lunch or during breaks. Tommy, you know anyone in banking? Someone who might look at a refinancing document and tell me if something's off? I know a guy, Dale Mitchell. Used to work at First National before he retired. Why? Just curious about something. Tommy didn't push. He gave me Dale's number. Dale Mitchell looked at the refinancing paperwork and whistled low. This signature's forged, he said. I've seen enough of these to know. Whoever did it was good, but not perfect. See here? He pointed to the way my supposed signature looped at the end. That's not how you sign. I've seen your signature on contracts. You never loop like that. Can you write that down? Official-like? I can write a letter. Not a legal document, but something that states my professional opinion. That'd help. Dale wrote the letter. I added it to my file. Another brick in the wall. Meanwhile, life went on. Brandon and Emma were suddenly very quiet. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits to the workshop. Patty, on the other hand, was loud. She started a campaign. Not against me directly. Too obvious. Instead, she started a whisper campaign. I heard about it through the grapevine. She was telling people at her yoga class that I'd shown up at the cabin and threatened the kids, that I was becoming unstable, that she was worried I might do something dangerous. Classic, preemptive damage control. If I ever did confront her publicly, she'd already planted the seeds of doubt. See? I told you he was unstable. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Instead, I went on the offensive. Quietly. I started talking to people. Neighbors, friends, coworkers. Not spreading rumors. Just telling the truth. Yeah, it's been rough, I'd say when someone asked about the divorce. Found out Patty had been planning it for years. Even forged some paperwork. It's a mess. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. People filled in the blanks themselves. And in a small town, gossip spreads faster than fire in dry timber. Within a week, people were asking Patty about the forged documents. She denied it, of course, said I was making things up. But the seed was planted. Doubt is a powerful thing. Then came the video. I'd almost forgotten about it. The recording from the cabin when Brandon had shoved me and I'd pinned him against the truck. Voice only, but clear. I posted it to a community Facebook group. Not the main town page. That would have been too obvious. I posted it to a smaller group, one dedicated to Maple County property owners. The caption was simple. Anyone else having issues with unauthorized people removing property from their cabins? Recorded this at my late mother's cabin. Looking for advice. The video went viral. Local viral, which is still viral. Within 24 hours, it had been shared 100 times. People recognized Brandon's voice. Emma's voice. They heard Brandon admit to taking furniture to sell. They heard Emma say, "This is technically stealing." The comments were brutal. "Isn't that the Kimball kids?" Wow, disrespectful. Stealing from their own grandmother's cabin. Classy. Didn't their mom just divorce their dad? Sounds like the whole family's trash. I didn't comment. I didn't engage. I just watched the firestorm unfold. By the end of the week, Brandon had lost a side job he'd had with a local contractor. The contractor, a guy named Phil, who knew my mother, saw the video and decided he didn't want to work with someone who'd steal from family. Emma's social circle started to fracture. The women she did yoga with, the friends she met for brunch, they started distancing themselves. Because in a small town, reputation is currency. And Emma's currency had just been devalued. Patty tried to control the damage. She posted a long, rambling explanation on Facebook about how the video was taken out of context and how I was manipulating the narrative. No one cared. The damage was done. Around this time, Derek made his first mistake. He showed up at my workshop. I was alone, working on a custom cabinet for a client, when I heard a car pull up outside. I glanced through the window and saw the Lexus. Leased, not owned, I remembered. Derek got out. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested he worked out regularly but not obsessively. He wore a polo shirt and khakis. Business casual, the uniform of a man who thought he was important. I kept working on the cabinet. Let him come to me. He knocked on the door. I didn't answer. He knocked again. "Jack, I know you're in there. I saw your truck." I set down my sander and walked to the door. Opened it but didn't invite him in. "Can I help you?" I asked. "I think we should talk," Derek said. His voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice that closed deals and convinced people to do things they'd regret later. About? About Patty. About your kids. About this situation." "There's no situation," I said. "There's a divorce, and it's done." "Right. But this stuff on Facebook, the video, you're making things difficult." I posted a video asking for advice about property theft. How's that making things difficult? Derek's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Come on, Jack. We both know what you're doing. You're trying to make Patty and the kids look bad. They did that themselves. This isn't helping anyone. It's just causing pain." "You're right," I said. "It is causing pain, just not to me." Derek's expression shifted, just for a second. A flicker of irritation. Then the smooth mask came back. "Look, I came here to offer an olive branch. Patty wants to move forward. She doesn't want this to get ugly." "Too late." "It doesn't have to be. If you stop with the social media posts, stop stirring up trouble, we can all just move on." "And if I don't?" Derek leaned in slightly. "Then things might get complicated. For you." There it was, the threat. Not overt, but clear enough. I looked at him for a long moment, studied his face, his posture. He thought he had the upper hand. He thought I was going to back down. "You know what's interesting?" I said. "What?" "I looked you up. Corporate security, fraud investigation, 2 ex-wives who both accused you of financial manipulation. Never proven, but the accusations are public record." Derek's smile faltered. "And I found a photo," I continued. "You and Patty, 3 years ago, at a wedding, which means you've been in her ear for a long time, coaching her, planning this." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? See, I think you saw an easy mark. A woman married to a construction worker with some assets. A cabin, a house, savings, and you thought, why not help her take it all? Maybe get a cut for yourself. That's insane. Is it, or is it just what you do? Find vulnerable people and manipulate them for profit." Derek's jaw tightened. "You need to be careful, Jack. Making accusations like that can get you sued for slander. Only if they're false, I said, and we both know they're not. We stared at each other for a moment, two men sizing each other up. He was taller, younger, probably thought he was tougher, but I'd spent 23 years building things with my hands. I knew how to be patient, how to wait for the right moment, how to strike when someone wasn't expecting it. Derek must have seen something in my face because he took a step back. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right," I said. "It's not." He got back in his Lexus and drove away. I went back inside and added notes to my file. Derek Paulson, professional manipulator, threatened me. Mistake, because threats mean fear, and fear means vulnerability. I was getting closer. The next day, I went back to the county clerk's office. Different clerk this time, but same brown carpet and fluorescent lights. "I need to see all documents filed under Patricia Kimball for the past 5 years," I said. The clerk looked at me like I'd asked for the moon. "That's a lot of documents. I'll pay for copies." She sighed and started typing. It took her 20 minutes, but finally she handed me a stack of papers thick enough to use as a doorstop. I took them to my truck and started reading. Most of it was boring: property tax records, utility transfers, standard stuff. But there was one document that made me sit up straight. A quitclaim deed, filed 18 months ago, transferring partial ownership of the cabin from me to Patricia. Signed by me, except I'd never signed it, never even seen it. Another forgery. But this one was different. This one was filed with the county, which meant it was part of the official record, which meant Patty didn't just have maintenance rights, she had partial ownership, or she thought she did. Except the signature was forged, and I could prove it. I photographed the document, sent it to Howard. He called me back within an hour. "This is big, Jack. If we can prove this is forged, we can potentially unravel the entire property settlement, maybe even file criminal charges." "Not yet," I said. "Why not?" "Because I want to see how far they'll go. If I show my hand now, they'll lawyer up and shut down. But if I wait, if I let them think they're safe, they'll make more mistakes." "You're playing a dangerous game." "I've been playing defense my whole life," I said. "It's time to go on offense." That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to church. Not because I was religious. I'd stopped believing in a benevolent God around the time my mother got cancer. But I went because I knew Patty would be there. She'd always been a Sunday churchgoer. Not out of faith, but out of appearances. In a small town, being seen at church is social currency. I sat in the back. Watched her sit in the third row with Derek, Brandon, and Emma. Like a happy little family. People noticed me. Of course they did. Whispers spread through the congregation like wind through wheat. But I didn't care. I wasn't there to pray. After the service, I waited outside. Watched them file out. Patty saw me first. Her face went tight. "Jack, what are you doing here?" "Same thing you are," I said. "Attending church?" "You don't go to church?" "Maybe I've changed." Derek stepped forward, putting himself between Patty and me. Protective or possessive. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. "I think you should leave," Derek said. "Public sidewalk," I replied. "I've got as much right to be here as you." Brandon and Emma hung back, watching nervously. They knew this wasn't going to end well. "You're embarrassing yourself," Patty said. "Am I? Or am I just reminding people that you exist, that we were married for 23 years, that you didn't just divorce me, you humiliated me in front of everyone I work with?" "You signed the papers," Patty said. "You didn't have to." "You're right, I didn't, and that was my first mistake. But don't worry, I'm done making mistakes." I walked away before she could respond, didn't look back. But I knew they were watching, knew they were unsettled. Good. Unsettled people make mistakes. The following week, I got a call from Emma. First time she'd reached out since the cabin incident. "Dad, can we talk?" "We're talking now." "I mean in person, just you and me." I thought about it, considered saying no, but curiosity got the better of me. "Where?" "Coffee shop on Main Street. Tomorrow at 10? "Fine." I showed up early, picked a table in the back where I could see the door. Old habit from construction sites. Always know your exits, always see who's coming. Emma arrived 5 minutes late. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. Her Instagram perfect makeup couldn't quite hide it. She sat down across from me, ordered a latte. I stuck with black coffee. "Thanks for meeting me," she said. "What do you want, Emma?" I wanted to apologize. That surprised me. I didn't let it show. For what? For everything. The retirement party, the cabin, the video on Facebook, all of it. Okay. She blinked. Okay, that's it? What do you want me to say? You apologized. I heard you. Doesn't change anything. Dad, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Mom, she was really unhappy. For years. And Derek, he helped her see that she deserved better. Better than what? Better than, I don't know. Better than being stuck. Stuck, I repeated. Is that what she told you? That she was stuck? She said you didn't have ambition, that you were happy being a construction worker forever, that you never wanted more. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Emma, I worked 60-hour weeks for 23 years. I saved every penny so you and Brandon could go to college without debt. I bought your mother a house, a car, anything she wanted. And I never complained, not once. If that's not ambition, I don't know what is. But you never wanted to, I don't know, climb the ladder, become something bigger. I was a construction site supervisor, I said. I managed crews. I built half this town. What's bigger than that? Emma looked down at her latte. She made it sound different. I'm sure she did. She's good at that, making things sound different than they are. I'm sorry, Emma said again, softer this time. Are you? Or did Derek tell you to come here and smooth things over because the Facebook video is hurting your reputation? She flinched. That's not fair. Neither is stealing furniture from your grandmother's cabin. Neither is cheering when your mother divorced me in front of my coworkers. Neither is any of this, Emma, so don't talk to me about fair. I know we screwed up. But Dad, if you keep pushing this, if you keep posting things online and making Mom look bad, it's just going to get worse. Derek says, I don't give a damn what Derek says. Emma went quiet. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm going to keep living my life. And if that makes your mother uncomfortable, if that makes Derek nervous, if that makes you and Brandon look bad, that's not my problem. You made your choices. Now live with them. I stood up, dropped a $5 bill on the table for my coffee. Dad, wait. I looked back at her. I really am sorry, she said. And for the first time, she sounded like she meant it. Noted, I said. Then I left. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. You need to back off. Final warning. I didn't respond. Just screenshotted the text and added it to my file. Threats on social media, threats in person, threats by text. They were scared, and scared people make mistakes. I just had to wait for the right one. February hit like a sledgehammer wrapped in ice. The coldest month on record in Michigan, or at least it felt that way. I didn't care. Cold weather meant work slowed down, which meant more time for me. More time to plan, more time to think about the next steps. Patty was in jail. Derek was still missing, but I'd heard through the grapevine that he'd been spotted in Ohio. The prosecutor was working with authorities there to bring him back. Brandon and Emma had gone quiet. No calls, no texts, no attempts to reconcile. I figured they were either embarrassed or waiting for me to make the first move. They'd be waiting a long time. I started spending more time at the cabin. It had become my sanctuary, a place where the only sounds were wind through the pines and the occasional creak of old wood settling. No drama, no lies, just peace. I was there one Saturday afternoon, replacing a window frame that had rotted through when I heard a truck pull up the dirt road. I set down my tools and walked around to the front. It was Brandon. He got out of his truck slowly, like he wasn't sure if I'd chase him off. He looked rough, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. His coat was old, maybe 10 years old, and too thin for this weather. Dad, he said. Brandon. Can we talk? I crossed my arms. You drove 2 hours. Might as well say what you came to say. He looked at the cabin, at the new deck boards, the fresh stain on the siding, the replaced window frames. Looks good, he said. Thanks. I heard about Mom, the sentencing. Yeah. 18 months, that's a long time. She committed fraud. She's lucky it wasn't longer. Brandon nodded. He kicked at the snow with his boot. Emma and I, we've been talking. About everything. About the divorce. About the retirement party. About all of it. And we realized we screwed up. We should have asked you about Mom's side of the story. We should have checked. We shouldn't have just gone along with it. No, you shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Dad. Really. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. I studied him. He looked sincere. But sincerity is cheap. Actions matter. Words don't. Why are you here, Brandon? Because you're my dad, and I miss you, and I don't want to lose you over this. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. There's a difference. I know, and I'm trying to fix it. How? He reached into his coat and pulled out something, a drill, my Milwaukee cordless drill, the one he'd borrowed 6 months ago and never returned. I kept this, he said. I know I shouldn't have, but I don't know what I thought, that you wouldn't notice, that you wouldn't care, but I'm bringing it back now, and I'm sorry. I took the drill, checked it over. This doesn't fix anything, I said. I know, but it's a start. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He was 28 years old and still acting like a kid, still waiting for someone else to solve his problems, still expecting forgiveness without putting in the work. You want to fix things? I asked. Yes. Then stop waiting for me to forgive you. Earn it. Get your life together. Stop making excuses. Stop blaming other people. Become someone worth respecting. Brandon nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. Good. Now get out of here. I've got work to do. He hesitated, like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. He just got back in his truck and drove away. I watched him go. Then I went back to work on the window frame. Emma didn't come to the cabin. She called instead. Dad, I heard Brandon went to see you. He did? How did it go? He returned my drill. That's good, right? It's a start. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, I want to see you too, but I don't know if you'll want to see me. Why? Because I said some things at the retirement party and after. Things I didn't mean. Like what? Like that you held Mom back, that you didn't have ambition, that you were the reason we didn't have more. You said all of that. I know, and I was wrong. Derek told Mom to say those things, and Mom told us. And we believed her because it was easier than admitting she might be lying. Easier, I repeated. You chose easy over truth. Yes, and I'm sorry. Sorry's not enough, Emma. I know, but I don't know what else to do. You start by telling the truth, to yourself, to other people. You stop living for appearances and start living for something real. I don't know how. Figure it out. You're 26. No one's going to do it for you. She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. Part of me wanted to comfort her, tell her it was okay, but it wasn't okay, and coddling her wouldn't help. I have to go, she said. Okay. Dad? Yeah? Do you hate us? Me and Brandon? No, I said. I don't hate you. I'm just disappointed. And that's worse. She hung up. June arrived with heat that made the cabin feel like a sauna. I spent most of my time outside working on the final touches, building a new storage shed, replacing the old dock down by the water, small projects that didn't need doing but gave me an excuse to stay busy. I wasn't avoiding anything. I was just waiting for the right moment. Derek's trial started on a Tuesday. I didn't attend, but I followed the updates through Howard. He'd text me every evening with a summary of the day's proceedings. Day 1. Jury selection. Looks like a decent jury. Prosecutor is sharp. Day 2. Opening arguments. Prosecutor painted Derek as a serial con artist. Defense claims he was just trying to help Patty. Day 3. Sandra testified. She was great, calm, detailed, damning. Day 4. Michelle testified. Even better than Sandra. Derek's lawyer tried to rattle her, but she didn't budge. Day 5. Other victims testified. The jury is not buying Derek's defense. By the end of the first week, it was clear which way the trial was going. Derek Paulson was going to prison. The verdict came down on a Friday afternoon. Guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, accessory to forgery, the whole package. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. I got the news from Howard via text. He's done. They're going to throw the book at him. Probably 5 to 7 years. I texted back, good. That weekend, I drove back to town. I'd been staying at the cabin almost full time for the past month, but I needed to check on the workshop, make sure everything was still in order. The workshop looked the same as I'd left it. Tools organized, floor swept, everything in its place. I'd spent so much time here after the divorce, living here, planning here, rebuilding myself here. Now it felt like a relic of a different life, a different version of me. I walked through the space, touching familiar objects. The workbench where I'd first made notes about Patty's betrayals. The couch where I'd slept that first week. The coffee pot that had fueled late-night research sessions. This place had been my bunker, my war room. Now it was just a workshop again. I spent Sunday cleaning, not because the place was dirty, just because I needed something to do with my hands, something to focus on besides the fact that everything was finally coming together. While I was sweeping, my phone rang. It was Emma. "Dad, have you seen the news?" "What news?" "About Derek. He got convicted, 5 to 7 years." "I heard." "Mom's freaking out. She's been calling me from jail, crying, saying she didn't know Derek was using her." "She knew," I said. "Maybe not all of it, but she knew enough." "What do I tell her?" "Tell her I said hello." Emma paused. "You're not going to visit her, are you?" "No." "Dad, she's still Mom. She's still family." "No, she's not. Not anymore. She stopped being family the moment she handed me those divorce papers in front of everyone I work with. But, Emma, I'm done talking about your mother. She made her choices. She's dealing with the consequences. That's not my problem." "It's been 6 months," Emma said. "Are you ever going to forgive her?" "Maybe, maybe not. But it won't be anytime soon." But I hung up and went back to sweeping, but I couldn't focus. Emma's words kept echoing in my head. It's been 6 months. 6 months. Half a year since the retirement party, half a year since the humiliation, half a year since I'd signed those papers and whispered, "You have no idea what you just did." They knew now, or they were starting to, but they still didn't know everything, because the final piece of my plan was about to fall into place. I'd been thinking about it for weeks, planning it, rehearsing it in my head. Not revenge, exactly, just closure. A final statement, a way to show them that I wasn't the broken man they thought I was. The plan was simple. Invite them to the cabin, all of them. Brandon, Emma, and yes, even Patty. She was still in jail, but I could arrange for her to be there via video call. A family meeting, one last conversation before I close this chapter of my life for good. I'd tell them everything, show them the evidence I'd gathered, the forged documents, the timelines, the connections to Derek, everything, and then I'd show them what they'd lost. Not just the cabin, not just the money, but me. The father who'd worked 60-hour weeks to provide for them. The husband who'd loved Patty even when she didn't love him back. The man who'd built a life for them and asked for nothing in return. They'd lost that man, and I was going to make sure they understood what that meant. I sent the invitations via text, short and to the point. Family meeting at the cabin, Saturday, June 25th, 2 p.m. Be there. Brandon responded first. "Okay." Emma responded an hour later. "I'll be there. Is Mom invited?" I texted back, "Yes." Emma didn't respond after that. The week leading up to the meeting was strange. I felt calm. Too calm. Like I'd already moved past everything and was just going through the motions. I spent the time preparing the cabin, not cleaning it. It was already clean, but arranging it. Setting up chairs on the deck, printing out documents, building a timeline on a large poster board like I was presenting a case to a jury. Because that's what this was. A trial. Not in a legal sense, but in a moral one. I was going to lay out the evidence, show them what they'd done, and let them live with it. Saturday arrived. The weather was perfect. Sunny, not too hot. A light breeze coming off the lake. I set up the chairs on the deck, 5 of them, arranged in a semicircle. I placed a laptop on a small table, ready for the video call with Patty. Then I waited. Brandon arrived first. He pulled up around 1:30, half an hour early. He got out of his truck and walked up to the deck slowly, like he was approaching a crime scene. "Dad," he said. "Brandon." "What's this about?" "You'll see. Wait until Emma gets here." He sat down in one of the chairs. Didn't say anything else. Just stared at the trees. Emma arrived at 1:50. She looked nervous. Kept glancing at Brandon, like she was trying to figure out what was happening. "Dad, what's going on?" she asked. "Sit," I said. She sat. At 2 p.m., I opened the laptop and started the video call. Patty appeared on the screen a moment later. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back. She looked older, tired. Jack, she said. Her voice was small. Patty, what is this? A family meeting. I don't understand. You will. I stood in front of them. 5 people. The 4 of them sitting in chairs, me standing, holding a stack of documents. 6 months ago, I said, you divorced me at my retirement party, in front of everyone I work with. You handed me papers and told me it was over. And Brandon and Emma, you cheered. No one said anything. I signed those papers, I continued, and I walked away. And you thought that was the end of it. You thought you'd won, that you'd gotten rid of the man who held you back, the man without ambition, the man who wasn't good enough. Patty's face on the screen was pale. But here's the thing, I said. You underestimated me. You thought I was stupid, too dumb to notice the forged signatures, too weak to fight back, too broken to rebuild. I held up the first document, the forged quitclaim deed. This is the deed you forged, Patty, the one that tried to give you ownership of this cabin, my mother's cabin, the one thing I inherited that was mine. I held up another document, the maintenance agreement. This is the agreement you forged 5 years ago, giving yourself maintenance rights, setting the stage for the eventual takeover. Another document, the refinancing consent. This is the consent form you forged 3 years ago, so you could take out equity on the house without my knowledge, so you could pay for Emma's wedding and Brandon's failed business. I spread the documents out on the deck railing, a timeline of betrayal. You didn't just divorce me, I said. You stole from me, for years, and you got Brandon and Emma to help. We didn't know, Emma said quickly. Didn't you? I looked at her. You used my savings card when I was in the hospital, $800 at a designer store. You thought I wouldn't notice. I noticed. I just didn't say anything. Emma's face flushed. I turned to Brandon. And you. You stole my drill, my tools, little thefts, one after another, because you thought I was too stupid or too distracted to care. Brandon looked down at his hands. You all thought I was weak, I said. You all thought I'd just take it, sign whatever you put in front of me, disappear quietly. I pulled out another document, the court ruling, the one that invalidated all the forged documents. But I didn't. I fought back. I documented everything. I built a case. And I won. On the screen, Patty was crying, silent tears running down her face. Patty, you're in jail. 18 months. You'll have a record. You'll never be able to get a loan again, never be able to buy property. Your reputation is destroyed. I turned to Brandon and Emma. And you two. You lost your mother for 18 months. You lost the cabin you thought you'd inherit. You lost your father's respect. Was it worth it? No one answered. I walked to the edge of the deck, looked out at the lake. The water was calm, mirror smooth, beautiful. I spent 6 months planning this, I said. 6 months gathering evidence, building connections, waiting for you to make mistakes. And you did. You made so many mistakes. I turned back to face them. But here's the thing. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. Dad, Emma said, we're sorry. We really are. I know, but sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo the humiliation. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent building a life for people who didn't appreciate it. So what now? Brandon asked. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted you to know, to understand that you didn't win. You lost. All of you. I walked back to the laptop, looked at Patty's face on the screen. Derek was convicted, I said. 5 to 7 years. He's going to prison. Patty's eyes widened. He manipulated you, I continued. He saw you as a mark, an easy target, and he used you to get to me, to my assets. And when it all fell apart, he ran, left you to take the fall. I didn't know, Patty whispered. I swear, Jack, I didn't know. You knew enough. You knew you were forging documents. You knew you were lying. You knew you were destroying me in front of our friends and family. You knew all of that. I'm sorry. So you keep saying. I closed the laptop, ended the call. Patty's face disappeared. Then I turned to Brandon and Emma. I'm going to tell you something, I said, and I want you to remember it. They nodded. This cabin was the last piece of me you hadn't taken, the last thing that was mine. You tried to take it, you tried to sell it, You tried to erase my mother's memory and turn it into cash. I pulled out the property deed, the real one, the one that showed my name, my ownership. But you failed. This cabin is still mine, and it always will be. I walked over to the metal fire pit I'd set up earlier. It was already filled with kindling and papers. I struck a match and lit it. The fire caught quickly, flames rising in the afternoon sun. Then I pulled out a stack of papers. Not the real documents, copies. Copies of the forged agreements, copies of the lies Patty had told, copies of the evidence I'd gathered, and I dropped them into the fire. Brandon and Emma watched in silence as the papers burned, as the flames consumed the evidence of their betrayal. "This is over," I said. "All of it. I'm done fighting. I'm done proving myself. I'm done caring what you think of me." "Dad," Emma said, "please, we want to make this right. You can't. Not really. But you can try to be better people. You can stop making excuses. You can take responsibility for what you did. And maybe, someday, I'll be able to look at you without seeing the people who cheered when your mother divorced me." I walked to the edge of the deck again, looked out at the lake, at the trees, at the cabin I'd rebuilt with my own hands. "I'm keeping the cabin," I said, "and you're not welcome here, not until you've earned it, not until you've proven you're worth my time." How do we do that?" Brandon asked. "Figure it out. You're adults. Act like it." I turned away from them, walked inside the cabin, closed the door behind me. Through the window, I watched them sit there for a moment, lost, confused, broken. Then, one by one, they stood up, walked to their trucks, drove away. I watched them disappear down the dirt road, watched the dust settle behind them, and then I smiled. 6 months later, and they finally understood. They tried to destroy me, to erase me, to take everything I'd built, but I was still standing, still here, still strong, and they were the ones who'd lost everything. I poured myself a drink, sat on the deck, watched the sun set over the lake. It was the best sunset I'd seen in years,